important that we know who you are, but also we are going to have a raffle this evening for approximately €600 worth of safety equipment. We have a pair of trousers, a pair of gloves, a pair of boots, and a helmet, visor and earmuffs. So if you hold on to the tickets you've been given, there will be a draw at the end. And to top it all off, we are giving you tea and coffee free of charge. So there you go. Everything we have this evening is free, gratis, and for nothing. And I'm saying that deliberately before we start. This is our 5th venue this season already, and we've had really large crowds. We were in Charleville last night, and we had over 150 people in attendance there. We've been in Clonakilty, and we've been in Cork City, and I think one other venue. They started drifting into each other after a while. But this is in fact our 4th year of doing this. And we've spoken with over 11,000 people now at this stage in 4 years. People like yourselves who are looking to get information when it comes to the maintenance of chainsaws. Okay, so that's what we're here for this evening, is to share our information with you. To give you a brief introduction to what we're going to do, the main part of the presentation is about the maintenance of chain, how to sharpen your chain properly. Now you may be good at it already, fair enough, but there might be something else in the presentation for you. We do a little bit on the safety aspect of the chainsaw, your personal safety when using a chainsaw. We also do a little bit on oils, what oils you should use, and also on the fuels and the problems that we have with fuel today. So it's all good information, and it's information that you can use when you go out of here. So, to get started, my name is Andy Walsh, and I'm the aftermarket manager for a company called Liffey Distributors based in Dublin, and we represent brands like Husqvarna, Johnson, McCulloch, Flymo, Aspen and Oregon. We are probably the biggest distributor in the chainsaw business in the country. I've worked for the company now for 35 years. I'm in fact in my 36th year, and I'll complete that in July. So I've gained a little bit of knowledge over those years, and as I say, my job here this evening is to share it with you. I'd like to start off at the start of the evening and ask a question. Has anybody here in this room not heard of the Oregon brand name? That's not unsurprising, because of the 11,000 people that I've spoken with over the last 4 years, not one person has ever said that they haven't heard of the Oregon brand name. It is in fact the original brand of chainsaw chain in the world. And to give you a little bit of background into it, in 1946 this guy called Joe Beaufort Cox, while studying the larva of a wood beetle, as one does on a Wednesday afternoon while you're having your sandwiches sitting on a log, noticed that this larva was cutting through pretty hard timber, just using the 2 C-shed cutters on the top of its head. So like all the good answers in this world, they come from nature. And Joe Cox copied the design of this cutter and introduced to the world in 1947 the modern day chainsaw cutter. And that design hasn't changed much since then. In 1947 he set up the Oregon Saw Chain Corporation in the basement of his house here, picture of it, in Portland in Oregon in the northwest United States of America. And that is where the Oregon brand name comes from. In 1952 it was taken over. And today, the Blount Corporation, one of the biggest multinational corporations in the world, own the Oregon brand name. And today you can see that we have almost $1 billion in revenue. They employ 3,500 employees, 1,300 still in Portland in Oregon in the United States. And we produce 200 million feet of chain per year. We produce chain for all of the chainsaw manufacturers, all of them, including Stihl. They'll make their own chain, but there are a few oddballs that they still get from Oregon. So there you go. That's a brief introduction to the Oregon brand name. And that is who we're running this presentation in conjunction with. Okay, to get started. I brought along here this evening a Husqvarna 576 chainsaw to use as a demonstration. And this is why I said to you earlier, those of you sitting down the back may not get to see what I'm showing, but you can follow it on the screen here. Ger is operating. So, questions. Before I start this, before I do anything, I'll ask a question here because I'd like to get a flavour of who I'm dealing with and presenting to. How many people here in the room sharpen their own chain? Wow, that's quite an amount. And how many think they're good at it? 1, 2, 3. Well, I have to tell you, that's not a bad thing because it makes my job so much easier. Because if you all knew how to do it, the first part of my presentation would be superb. So it's good that maybe I'm teaching the people that need teaching. Because, as I say, with all of those people I've spoken with before, very few people think they're actually good at it. In fact, I've come to the conclusion, or the opinion, should I say, that most people think you have to be the seventh son of a seventh son to be able to perform the dark art that is sharpening chainsaw chain. My job here this evening is to dispel that myth and make it as easy as possible for you to sharpen your chain, which is the most cost-effective way of sharpening. So, to get started, whenever you look at your chainsaw and you're looking at the chain, where is it that you look? Can I suggest that it's here? See here? Because everybody, when they're looking at their chain, does that. Yep, that's perfect. But can I tell you guys that you're looking at it upside down? Because you don't cut with it here, you cut with it here. I have to tell you, whenever I'm doing teaching, and it doesn't matter what I teach, I'm the service manager, the aftermarket manager for many brands, and I do an awful lot of teaching, mainly to dealers, not to end users. That's why it's so good for me to actually get out and meet you guys. But whenever I do teaching, whether it's on transmissions or engines, carburetors, ignitions, whatever it is, I have a philosophy. If I can make you understand how something works, then it's much easier for you to be able to maintain it or to repair it. So what we're going to start off with is a little lesson in how a chainsaw chain actually works. And you'll say, yeah, it turns around and it cuts the timber. But the idea of this is, if you understand the three things that are going on when the chain is turning, then you'll know, without ever having to refer to a book, remember what I've said to you this evening and know how to do the job. So, I've brought along a little piece of chain that I have off my little top handle saw back in Dublin. You can see we're very big people in Dublin. And as I said, when you look at your chain, this is the way that you look at it. You look at it like this. But as I said to you, you're looking at it upside down. It doesn't cut like this, it cuts like this. Now everybody, when they look at their chain, they see this angle here. And everybody thinks that's the one that you're sharpening. But it is only half the story. Because when you look at it properly, this is the angle that's most important when you're cutting. And the best way I can describe this to you, or the best analogy I can use to describe how this works, is a timber plane. You know the timber plane? The further down the blade was, the harder it is to push, but the more timber you took. The higher up the blade was, the easier it was to push, but the less timber you took. Well, a chainsaw cutter, modern day chainsaw cutter, works in the exact same way. If you consider this is the way it is, and you're planing the timber, this is the angle that does the cutting, not this one. But you know when you're planing the timber, and the box got full, you turned it over, you tapped it, you blew on the blade, and you continue going. Yep. Well, let me tell you, modern day cutter travels between 18 and 28 meters per second. And trying to blow on that to try and clear it is a bit of a chore, and it can do damage to your lips if you get too close. So we have to find a way to be able to release the chip from the cut to clear itself. And that is where the angle that everybody knows and talks about comes in, which is the side plate angle. This one that you can see when you look at the top of your chainsaw bar. This angle performs the function, if you can see here, this is the way it's cutting, like a timber plane. This side plate angle then comes in, it releases the chip, it travels down along the channel here, and it hits the rubber strap on the back of the clutch cover here and drops down. That is basically how a chainsaw cutter works, like a timber plane. But you remember what I said to you about the timber plane? The further down the blade was, the harder it was to push. Higher up it was, the easier it was to push, with the less timber you took. So we have to be able to determine how much timber we're going to take at every pass of the cutter. And what on this cutter do you think performs that function?
The tool to the front.
Absolutely. It's called a raker, or a depth gauge. And it works in the exact same way as a depth bar on a tiller. Whenever, and I'm sure you're going to be so impressed by this presentation this evening, you'll want to run home, get into the shed, get out the saw and have a look at it. And when you do, look at this raker on the front of the cutter, and you will see the figure 25. Does anybody know what that 25 stands for? What is the meaning of it? No. It is actually the depth that you cut. It's 25 thousandths of an inch. So if we turn it up the way it's supposed to be, that is 25 thousandths of an inch higher than that edge there. That's how much we cut. And if you took a micrometer and you measured the thickness of the chips on a properly sharpened chain, they would be 25 thousandths of an inch thick. So this is what determines how much we take. If this is too high, we've exposed too much of the tooth to the timber, and it becomes very aggressive. It starts to bite at the timber chuck and poke at it, and it causes kickback. It will also take the edge off very quickly. So like fellows who use a strimmer and think if they stick the card out here, they're going to get the field done in one pass. It doesn't work that way. The optimum amount of timber that you take is 25 thousandths of an inch. So there you go, guys. You're well on the way to becoming the seventh son of a seventh son. Because if you've understood what I've said in the last 10 minutes, you will know that the primary angle on your cutter is this one, the top plate angle. Strangely enough, it's known as the top plate angle because it's an angle and it's on the top plate. This is our secondary angle. Again, it's an angle and it's on the side plate. And thirdly, we have our raker or our depth gauge. Do you understand that? So this is how it works. And if you can get that into your head, then you're well on the way to being able to sharpen. So, let's start off with the first angle. And we won't start with the primary one because that's a little bit difficult. We'll start about the side plate angle, which is probably the angle that most people think they know. In fact, it's probably the main topic of conversation in the local public house on a Friday night. What angle do you sharpen at? And you get answers from 20, 25, 30, 35 degrees. Well, let me tell you, in 1947, when Joe Cox invented this modern day cutter, this angle was indeed 35 degrees. And about 20 years after that event, some guy in the new R&D department discovered that 30 was better than 35. It stayed sharp longer and it cut better. So 30 degrees became